So welcome to Inspire Talk with Betty Tran. Every single week, we are welcoming a very special guest speaker to our program. So when I start Inspire Talk, what I really want to do is to inspire people to spread the love, the kindness, and the positive, uplifting messages, in our community, especially in a time like this. So today we have a very special guest. To me, when I think about this guest, I think about him being very authentic. I thinking a very successful person with such a kind heart. I think of this person as somebody I look up to in our community, and I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from each of our guest speakers. So today I would like to introduce to our community Simon Pugh. Hello, Simon. Can you hear us?
Betty, hello, good afternoon. It's lovely to see you today. Thank you very much for inviting me onto these chats.
So Simon, for the community who haven't known about you, could you share maybe a little bit about you and what you want to share with our audience today? Before I do a proper introduction, before I would do a proper introduction for you, but I just wanted to get our speaker to come, I just want to get our audience to start coming in because we are live streaming. So, we will have our guests coming shortly, but until then, I will do a proper introduction for you. But yeah, we can just have a casual chat before we have people coming on board and listen to our live stream.
All right, thanks, Betty. So from a right now perspective, I have been living in Vietnam for 8 years, going on to 9 years. I live here with my husband and our 2 fur children, Dolce and Gabbana. I'm a Brisbane boy. I grew up in Brisbane in Australia, and I had a very, I had a good childhood. I had a safe childhood, but it was a childhood of the 1960s and 1970s, where our understanding of the world was very black and white, very limited. Because in that time, and if somebody asked me, I would say that at the age of 6, I knew I was different, and I never knew how to define different. And as I got a little more mature and probably came into puberty, I realized that different meant that I was gay. And that led to a whole bunch of discoveries and journeys and adventures to coming to that both realization and acceptance. From a professional perspective, I'm the CEO of the QLM label makers, the QLM Group. We manufacture stickers, labels, and packaging in 5 countries and 6 factories in Australia, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Cambodia, and of course here in Vietnam. So from a personal perspective, I love cooking and I love entertaining and I love staying healthy. So I actually never did sports a lot as a kid because they were team sports and I just did not like team sports at all. But when I discovered a bicycle whilst living in Canada, I discovered sports for myself that led me on to doing triathlons and running and taekwondo. And now I maintain a health regime by going to the gym and running, or right at the moment by doing a lot of HIIT workouts at home. So that's a little bit about me.
I mean, I was scrolling through your Facebook and the kind of exercise you're doing, I don't think a normal human being can do it. It's quite extreme. I take great pleasure in scrolling through your Facebook and seeing you maintaining a very, very healthy and positive lifestyle. So perhaps maybe you can share a few tips, how do you stay so positive? And what is your routine is like, so that we can have, helping our audience as well to go through a time like this.
Sure. So Betty, people ask me, why do I exercise? And the simple answer is at the age of 55, because gravity, because everything starts to fall south. And I want to be able to continue to enjoy my movement and my mobility. So this is an investment in health. I used to, as I say, compete in triathlons, and I was pretty good. I would win my age group races because I'm a very competitive person by nature. But that also involved 26 hours a week of training whilst I was also working full time. So now I just frame my day I frame my day by waking up in the morning and going running. And the trick for everybody is don't think about it. Don't let your brain kick in and start making deals about going back to bed. Wake up, roll out of bed, hit the floor, and then just go. And in the evenings during the day, I will do weight-bearing exercises. So I'll do gym work. And that just helps with, muscle tone and strength. And I think the exercise, Betty, you might have been alluding to, was doing push-ups on two dumbbells whilst having one leg on a dumbbell behind me and the other leg on nothing. So I was using my chest strength and I was using my core strength. That was hard.
I mean, I couldn't even do a push-up properly, let alone, doing them on the dumbbell. So I think whatever you're doing, you just take it to another level. I know that, apart from keeping healthy and exercising, food is a really important part of, of your mental health and also keep your body healthy. What do you eat? How do you, what is your nutrition that you have every day to keep your bodies, strong and healthy?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. So 2 years ago, I stopped eating meat. And I stopped eating meat for two reasons. I think the first was health, because I actually had a bit of a thyroid problem that was growing. It was benign, but that kind of scared me. And meat is an inflammatory product. But I think the bigger one for me was the morality of meat. I don't feel comfortable with the harvesting of meat. I don't feel comfortable with the environmental impact of meat. And I think that I can get my nutritional benefits in other ways. I don't decry other people eating meat. I think we all have boats that we need to float. But for me, it was a decision to transition over to not eating meat. So I have a mainly vegetarian-based diet. I do sometimes eat fish. And then I'm conscious of making sure that I balance the protein requirements. I use an app. I use Fit Pro just to track calories. And the other thing I'd say to people is get familiar with the calories that are in product, because it is frightening. Some of the things you think, that smear of peanut butter, that teaspoon of peanut butter has got 100 calories in it, or that 50 grams of cheese, or things of that nature. So I'm conscious of food, but at the same time, I'm not militant that I don't want to enjoy myself. I like to have a glass of wine. I like to have maybe a whiskey or something of that nature. So I think it's all about a balance. The good thing about cooking in a vegetarian way is it makes you really think about the food. I did have a look at becoming a vegan, and I thought it's just not for me, because I like cheese, I like eggs, I like butter. I tried to once make a dessert using tofu. I made a chocolate dessert using tofu, and all it was good for was throwing in the bin. So that's where I sit on food.
What a brave decision that you made. I mean, for me, I love food so much to miss out anything. That's my weakness. And when it comes down to that, food is my weakness, because I just love food in general. And Vietnam is amazing because we just got so many sorts of, different ingredients. We have so much flavor in our food. So yeah, it's hard for me to keep up with that, healthy routine sometimes. Got a cheat meal here and there, but I think that I'm trying to stay positive. So do you read as well, Simon, in time like this? Do you read to help you stay mentally strong? How do you keep your mind strong in a time like this?
Look, I think reading is really important, because sometimes it's about learning a thing. So if I read a biography of somebody, then I'm learning about their life, their experiences. And I read the biography of Magda Szubanski, who is an actress in Australia, fairly well known from Fast Forward and the Kath and Kim series, and also, an out and proud woman, but also understanding her struggles resonated strongly with me. But then I read a fiction book as well, and that just takes me to another place, and I stop thinking about the day-to-day. I think reading is important, and not screen timing so much.
I see. I think this information is very helpful. I think really important for all of us to stay really healthy. stay really sharp and keep our mental health in check in time like this is very critical. So thank you, Simon, for sharing your tips. But I would like to do a proper introduction of your story to our audience today, and also share a little bit about our topic of our chat today. Now that we've got more audience coming through our live stream, we can start our conversation. So welcome, Simon Pugh. Thank you for being part of my Inspire Talk, and thank you for being our featured guest speaker today. The topic that I would like to highlight today is that it's the power of being authentic and owning your story. So when I think of you, this was like a caption that come to my mind. And knowing you now, listen to your talk, a number of times through Julian and through a number of platforms, I have a feeling that you have a heart to help, young generations of young people in Vietnam, help them with the mindset. I feel that your story can shed a light to many people that are going through. And this is topic very dear to me because, being authentic is not an easy thing. So before getting to that topic, I like to give our audience a run through of who you are and what are you doing here in Vietnam. So Simon Pugh, you are born and raised in Brisbane, in Queensland, Australia, which is the best part of Australia, I have to say. Beautiful beach and beautiful, I've been there. I love it. The coral reef, I love that place. Your parents, your partner, your husband is operating a small printing company originally named Queensland Marking Systems, and much of your youth that you're spending assisting with the chores around the factory with your two sisters. And so Simon completed his secondary education at Brisbane Grammar School, and you graduate and entered into University of Queensland Law degree program. So during this studying, you took a gap period of 3.5 years overseas, living in Canada and the UK and traveling extensively throughout Africa. So this time it proved to it's play a very instrumental part of your personal development, providing life lesson, friendship, and cultivating a work ethic that remain to you to this day. And upon your returning to Australia, you recommenced your law degree and was last year into the degree that and then your father suddenly passed away. I know that you've been living in here in Vietnam for a while now, and you love Vietnam, and you have your own company here as well. But what stand out to me about your story, Simon, is that, every single opportunity that you got to share your story, I always have a sense of purpose in everything that you do, from the way that you run your company, from the way that you design your life. And not many people know, but you also being selected. Mostly our Aussie community know, but not many Vietnamese people know that you're also being appointed to be the president in AusCham as well. So I would like you to share with our audience, your journey being in Vietnam, and maybe take us back to the time when you was a childhood, and how do you define being authentic? To you, what being authentic really means.
That's a lot to unpack, and thank you very much for the introduction. Firstly, 8.5, going on to 9 years of living in Vietnam. I love it. We absolutely love it. Mm-hmm. We came to Vietnam when my husband had his 40th birthday. We said, okay, the day after the birthday, let's get on a plane and go somewhere. And we went to Cambodia and Vietnam, and we finished here in Ho Chi Minh City. And that was in February of 2012. Now, I'd never been to Vietnam before, didn't know a lot about the country, and all I can remember is my impressions of this insane city of Ho Chi Minh that I love so much. Massive traffic, people all over the place, and just thinking, oh, this is the wildest place I've ever been. And I've been to a lot of wild places. Later on that year, somebody in our business had heard of a company for sale in Vietnam. It was the oldest privately owned label company in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh City. And he said, and he came and had a look at it, and he said, you need to check this place out. And I'm like, oh, Vietnam's not in our strategic plan. It's not in our wheelhouse. He kept pestering me. So I came back in August of that very year. And I walked into the place and he said to me, "What do you think?" And I said, "I'm already moving in my mind." By September, we did due diligence. By October, we went to contract. By November, we'd purchased the company. It was just so, it felt so right. And I think in business, we can do a lot of intellectual things. We can do a lot of thinking. We can do a lot of cash flow, working out and projections, etc. But then it also has to feel right in our heart. And that's something that I've learned over a very long period of time. See, Betty, when I grew up as a kid, I grew up in the 60s. I was born in 1966. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, where life in Australia was very black and white. Life in Australia was very, very defined. It was very restrictive. As an example, in Australia growing up, in religion, you had the Catholics and the Protestants, and they were just two separate groups, and they were looked at like that, especially in the country where my mother came from. And when I was about 6, I realized I was different. I just realized I was different. I wasn't like anybody else that I knew. And I didn't know what that meant, but I know that I felt attractions I felt attractions to men, to guys, but not in a sexual way. I was not old enough for that. But I was also a fairly soft kid. I was a very not a soft kid, but I was a very not emotional either, but just wasn't robust. I used to have the crap beaten out of me as a kid growing up, whether it was at school or whether it was, when I would go and visit my cousins in the country. I was just different. It was kind of obvious. And growing up, as I became more and more aware of this, I could breathe less. I just held my breath all the time. I held my breath because I was holding a secret in, and a secret that I desperately didn't want anyone to know about, because I started to hear the slurs, fag, faggot, homo, and I was like, and that's me. I do remember going down to Sydney once and spending some time with some friends of my parents, and they had their children. One of them was 16 or 17 years old. I think at the time I was 12. And he was in a gang. And he told me how their gang went around Sydney targeting homos and bashing them up. And they had thrown this guy off the bridge. And all I could do was sit there going, that's me. I was terrified of being found out. And I could breathe even less. And as I got a little bit older, I just got angry. I remember by the age of 16, I was so angry. Nothing made sense. I had no place to fit in. I would listen to my parents, who were open-minded to the extent that both of them had friends who were gay. But they were only open-minded enough to have friends who were gay because that's what those people in the theatre did, or that's what, those people in fashion did, but otherwise, not at all. And I remember my mum asking me at the age of 18, somebody said, "You're gay." And I said, "Oh, that's ridiculous." She said, "Oh, thank goodness for that." And it just confirmed that I needed to keep this secret in. You mentioned that I went traveling, and I did. I started university, and I just did not feel like I fitted in. I didn't, like the rest of my life, I did not feel like I fit in. So after my first year of university, I deferred and went overseas. And I went overseas to breathe. I went overseas to be anonymous, to try and work out my being straight. I guess I thought if I went to a different place, I will feel better. I will meet a girl and everything will be okay. And, I'm glad I did. I left Australia with $900. I was away for 3.5 years. So I certainly worked, which is where my work ethic came in. I lived in Canada in the Rocky Mountains, and I met an amazing group of friends with whom I'm still in contact. but it didn't change anything. I still couldn't breathe because I was different. And whilst my friends were fun and we hung out, and I had a girlfriend, I had a couple of girlfriends, I tried really hard, but I also met a guy. And then, I hitchhiked across Canada. I ended up living in the UK. I was in Oxford, so it was a little more anonymous. And I was there for 9 months. And then I hitchhiked through Africa for 9 months. I started in Morocco and I ended up in Kenya. So 9 months in Africa, $2,000. And I looked like a homeless person because I had so little money. And when I was in Africa, I was in some of the poorest places in the world, meeting some of the kindest, most generous people in the world. And that gave me a forever sense of self in terms of I'm never better than anybody else. I just have different circumstances.
Yeah. Wow.
But still I couldn't breathe. And so that was my journey until I came to that moment of saying one day, I can't hold on any longer. I need to be able to breathe out.
Could you take our audience back to the time when you choose to be authentic with yourself, when you choose to own your own story, own up to the journey and come out and share who you are to the world? Could you take us back to that moment and the feeling that you're feeling when you did that?
It was relief. I actually did it. I did it with I told my last girlfriend, who is still the dearest. She's one of my best friends to this day. I was her bridesmaid at her wedding.
Wow.
So I got to, that happened 5 years ago. It was exciting. I went out with Christine, and there was a bottle and a half of whiskey involved, I have to say. And I said to Christine, I'm gay. And she went, I know. And I went, oh, thank God for that. And I thought, I've started the conversation. I've started it. I went home because I was living at home at the time. I'd come back from being overseas. And I thought, well, that went really well. And the last thing she said to me before I went into the house was, do not tell your parents you are drunk. I'm like, yeah, sure. And I got downstairs. My mum was up watching something on TV. And I said, Mum, I'm gay. And I thought I'd get the same great reaction. And no, I did not get the same great reaction. I remember my mother howling, like a noise I will never forget. She was howling like all of her expectations for me had all just come crashing down.
Wow.
And it was awful. But I could breathe. I had started the conversation. I had thrown it out there, and I was just prepared to deal with whatever came next. Yeah. And there was a lot that came next.
Absolutely. It's not an easy time, and that takes a lot of courage and bravery for you to do that. But I also know that, there's a lot of, people are going through the same stage where you've been before. How do you find that courage within you? I mean, it'd be easier for you to just, carry on and fit in and try to fit in with the society and what expected from your parent, what expect from society, because it's safer that way. But what give you that courage? What was the trade-off, and what went through your mind to take that courage, to make that step and confess and tell the world who you are?
I couldn't hold on any longer. I think if you ask any person, any one of your viewers or friends that you know who are working in a space, who are not out, that how do you live your life? You live your life in parts. There's a part that you live your life for this group of people, and a part you live your life for that group of people, and then there's another part you live your life for for your true friends who know who you are. If you have come to that point of letting somebody know, it's exhausting. You are holding on so tight, and I couldn't hold on any longer. I was just exhausted. And I hated myself. I felt ashamed. I felt guilty. I felt I'd let people down. And so, you know, in a way, it was kind of killing me inside.
Yeah.
So I just, I don't remember the trigger, but I remember the relief.
Yeah.
The next day, and I said to my mum that night after, you know, we had, you know, just an awful evening. And I said to her, don't tell Dad, because I thought this has gone super badly. And I thought, you know, Mum would be okay because she used to talk about her gay friends, Errol and John. And I thought, well, this has gone really badly. Please, God, don't tell Dad. The next morning, I was taking my goddaughter and her family to SeaWorld, massively hungover, and also with this, you know, this dread of what I was going to come home to. But I knew I needed to go home to it. And of course, Mum had told Dad. So then I had my parents sitting down saying to me that, you know, things like that I needed to go and seek some professional help. My dad said that I just needed to meet the right woman and then it would be okay, you know, the usual sorts of things. And what I was dealing with, Betty, and I think what your LGBTQI viewers who haven't come out yet would be dealing with, is the expectations of our parents.
Yeah.
Not just their expectations for what they thought our lives would look like. Mum and Dad thought I would be married, having kids, pumping out grandkids, but also how other people will see them. So parents still see being LGBTQI as somehow a genetic failure. They've failed. And it's one of the things my mum said, what will people say about me as a mother? So, you know, you have to manage all of those very complex things.
Yet you are a very successful entrepreneur today. You're the president of, you know, AusCham. You're managing an organization. You have over, you know, 600 employees around the world. You implement changes in your workplace, and I would like you to share a little bit about how you run your company so different to other company, because I was amazed, you know, when I hear the thing that you apply to your company. It must coming from, you know, at the time when you've been through so much and you start to find out that core value. Could you share with our audience, what is your core values, you know, the state where you're at the moment, and how do you do it differently with other people?
So we have 500 people in the company, so not 600. So one day.
Thank you for correcting me.
That's okay. Our company has values called CARES: consistency, accountability, respect, excellence, and sustainability. And those CARES values define how we have a dynamic relationship on everything within the business. So in our company, we have stakeholders. And the stakeholders are our team, our customers, our suppliers, our financial institution, our shareholders. And each one of those relationships has a rights and responsibilities relationship. So when I talk to our team, for example, I will say to our team, you've got the responsibility to meet your individual KPIs, to uphold the company's CARES values, and to actively participate in the success of the business. You also have rights. You have rights to a safe and respectful work environment. You have the right to career opportunity growth, and you have the right to salary and wage growth. And I think it's important that we convey the dual nature of every relationship. You know, I listen at the moment to the conversations around COVID, around vaccines, around mask mandates, especially coming from the West. And all I hear people talk about is my rights, you're infringing my rights. And what I want to ask is, where's your responsibilities?
Yeah.
Because it's a two-edged conversation. I think, you know, I said to you before that I learnt a lot of humility when I was traveling. I'll give you this little story. I was taking a truck 50 kilometers between two towns in Zaire, now known as the Congo. And we were heading to a town called Bumba on the Congo River. About 25 kilometers into the journey, the truck broke down. Now, this truck had about 100 people on it. You know, we were standing there like that. And people just started getting off and walking. And we asked what was happening. And they said, oh, truck tomorrow. You wait here, truck tomorrow, and, you know, you can continue on. And we couldn't walk 25 kilometers. We had our backpacks, you know, carrying water. And we broke down outside of a couple of mud huts. So we set up camp that night. We set up our tents. We asked the people, can we set up our tents? They said yes, and we set up our tents. We had no food because we thought 50-kilometer trip will only take 7 hours. You know, we'll get to town, we'll buy some food. That night, these people living in a mud hut brought out food to a bunch of white, you know, I think there were 3 white people sitting outside of their hut, and they bought us food. We didn't ask for it. They gave it to us. They didn't ask us for money. They made sure we were safe that night. That generosity from people who have nothing has always stuck with me. And when we run the company, when we run QLM, I'm not QLM. QLM is its own entity. And so if we all do our part to make sure that that business is strong, then that mud hut can give meals to everybody. That guides me. And I think the other thing, obviously, is that growing up not belonging, growing up not feeling like I was a part of anything, has made me make sure that within our business, we have safe spaces for whoever you are in terms of your color, religion, race, sex, sexuality. That we have places where people can be themselves, whatever that is, so they can breathe in and out okay. And, you know, I don't know if I've said to you, but certainly it's the lived experience in QLM that no person is any more or less important than anybody else. We just have different job responsibilities. So when I get to work, I don't turn up to work as the CEO. I turn up to work as Simon, who has a job to set strategy, to work with various people to make sure that, you know, the company is overall going in a direction that we want it to be.
Yeah.
But I have no pretense. I have no, you know, it's just not me. I turn up to work on my motor scooter, have lunch with everybody else. I don't think about these things because they're not important.
What is your, when we talk about being authentic, I would like to just, you know, take your view on what do you think authentic should be? How do you define being authentic? Because I think to everybody is slightly different. So what is being authentic means to you, Simon?
It means not having to talk in code. Now, anybody, again, who is LGBTQI will understand that when you're having conversations, you talk in code. You are asked particular questions about your girlfriend, if you're a guy, and you talk about, if you do, you talk about my partner. Or, you know, you say, I don't have anybody. I don't have a wife. I've had so many questions. And this was in places that I did not feel that it was appropriate to talk, you know, my truth. It was in Bangladesh, and this guy said to me, "Are you married?" I said yes, because I am. And he says, "Do you have children?" And I said no, and he just wouldn't let it go. He just kept going. And in the end, I said, "My wife is barren." It was the only way I could shut the conversation down. But normally, it is about being able to say exactly what something is. I have a husband. So I talk about my life and my husband because that's what I've got. And I remember Julianne saying to me, I always find it interesting that you talk about your husband, or, you know, it was just a neutral comment, but something about the fact that I talk about my husband, and because that's what the reality is. So I think for me, that's the part of being authentic, is not having to pretend, not having to talk in code.
And if you can share with the, our audience, especially, I know that some of them are going through tremendous amount of pressure because, we come from, Vietnam, which is a very conservative culture. We don't talk even about mental health. We don't even talk about, now the society is a lot more open. But back in the time, that the time where you were born, or the time when you came out, that is a shock for a lot of people. So what is your advice for those who are still considering, right? Considering choosing to be authentic? What would you say to them?
Well, I think firstly, you have to acknowledge where your situation lies. And one of the things that I would say to people thinking about coming out is, are you going to be at physical risk? I mean, there is a whole spectrum of the way people behave. Now, for myself, there was never any question about not being physically safe. My parents sent me to a shrink. They sent me to a psychologist, a psychiatrist. There was a lot of emotional baggage that came with our conversations, but never a fear of physical safety. And I would say to people to have that honest conversation. If they're afraid of physical safety, you need to, if you're going to come out, find a neutral place to have the conversation. I know that sounds like a terrible thing, but it's unfortunately real. I think the other thing is, what do you want to achieve from this? You need to have the resilience. If you're going to come out and because you want validation, it's probably not going to happen, because you're shocking people who have an expectation, and you're shocking people who are going to feel, what are other people going to say about us? They care about what other people are going to say. So when you're coming out, make sure that there's some resilience inside, that it's not asking people to validate you. And so to do that requires a support network of friends who know who you actually are. Or even there might be some extended family who might know who you actually are. Have them in place to make sure that they're there to help pick up the pieces.
Yeah. When I hear your story for the first time, Simon, what came to my mind was this 3 words, right? I see the huge amount of strength, internal strength inside you. And, most people talk about the Simon that is very successful, the Simon with the title, he's the president of AusCham, the Simon that, he's the CEO of a company with 500 employees. But most of the time when people talk about success, they don't really talk about adversity. They don't talk about the time when you struggle. So if you could take our audience back to a time when you really hit that rock bottom, and your feeling when you went through it, because I believe that every change you make now in your life is not because it came out of thin air. It came from a particular moment, that defined moment that changed you. So what was your defined moment that really changed you as a human being?
It's very easy to answer this one, sadly. When I came out to my parents, it wasn't like there was some cathartic moment and suddenly everything was better. It was the beginning of a journey. It was the beginning of a journey of unpacking a huge amount of baggage that I had built up by the tender age of 24. And when I say a huge amount, I'm talking an airport carousel worth of baggage, emotional baggage. 6 months after I came out, my father died suddenly. I was in the business that was technically insolvent. 3 days after he died, I met with the company accountants who told us we were technically insolvent, and if Mum handed back her house and the company, that she would be able to walk away from the situation. Now, we ended up finding another accountant who told us that we weren't technically insolvent, so we could continue trading, but then we dug out. And that was in 1992. So I was dealing now with, obviously having started my journey of coming out, because Mum and Dad said to me, don't tell anyone else. What will they think of us? What will they think of the company? So, there was more guilt on top of the guilt. Then Dad dies. And then during the next year of Mum processing her anger, Mum tells me that I'm the reason Dad died. And I'm working in this business with her. And then what I'm doing in the business is also seeing how the culture of the company was. And it was not a culture that I liked. It was awful. And so I'm dealing with coming out, unpacking the baggage. My father's died. The company is technically insolvent. Mum and I are working together at completely different odds. I started doing drugs. I started doing recreational drugs, ecstasy, amphetamines, smoking pot, anything to escape, anything to get outside of myself. Unfortunately, all this came to a head in 2000. It was April of 2000. And I was just a person going all over the place, trying still desperately trying to work out how, where, and why. And through a bad decision on my behalf, our landlord locked us out of our building that we were operating a factory in. Couldn't operate. We had to go to the Supreme Court for injunctive relief to get back into the building so we could start operating again. And I nearly bankrupted the company. I had to sell my apartment and put the proceeds of the apartment back into the business to keep it going. I had to deal with my extended family coming and taking great delight in telling me what a screw up I was. I didn't take a salary, so I was living back at home with my mother, and every morning she would wake up and she would say to me, you effed this up, you fix this up. But she also wouldn't let me walk away from it, because I just wanted to go and crawl up into a hole and die. I mean, this was just the accumulation of everything. Just came to one screaming red hot mess. But I didn't. I owned it. I owned this mess that I had created. And I owned the reason why we had got here. And I changed. I 360 degree. I stopped doing drugs. I got razor focused at what I actually wanted to achieve. I held myself to account for what I had done. And I also forgave myself for the fact that, I needed to be able to move on. And I started to actually properly build the foundation for my life.
Easy say than easy done, right? Because,
It was awful. It was awful.
It's not easy done, right? So for those who, who still struggle at the moment, who've been through what you're going through, what do you advise for them? How could you get yourself out of that mess? Because it's easy to say, but what was the measure that you put in place to ensure that you never look back at that journey?
I felt the pain. I stopped and I physically felt the pain, the shame, the humiliation. I just got in contact with all of those feelings. And I felt them rawly, as raw as they were, and then I started to let them go. Because what I think I didn't realize is that, there's two parts to the way we operate. Betty, and for your audience, we operate intellectually. I could think, I'm a very intellectual person. I must say, don't know how, but I've got a well-functioning brain to problem solve and strategize and look for things. And I was trying to do everything in my head.
Yeah.
What I wasn't in touch with was my heart, with my emotions. How did this make me feel? What was the raw emotion making me drive to do the things that I was? So I wasn't connected with myself. When I felt those things and started to let them go, I started to physically shift.
Wow.
So, you know, I would say to your viewers listening, that was a really critical part of my pathway, because once I did that, I could make a change. I could then start to see what I wanted it to be, and how I wanted it to feel. You know, I joke that the boyfriends I had up until that moment, and then when I eventually met my husband, were only a reflection of what I thought I deserved. Uniformly terrible. They were terrible people. They were really bad relationships. I would never engage in a relationship like that now. But it's what I thought I deserved. It's what I thought I was worth. And it was only when I got to the point of liking myself, not even loving myself, just liking myself, and thinking that I was okay, and that I actually didn't need anybody, is then I met the person that I've been with now for 18 years.
What a journey, really, you know, what a journey that you have come. So with where you are at the moment in your life, Simon, the stage where you are at in your life, what mattered to you? What's so important to you? Because I know you are a massive advocate for LGBT community. And I know that every moment you have a chance, you want to open up, you know, and share, because what you've been sharing with me is not easy, you know, because most of the time we're trying to keep our status, our professional status in a certain way. But with you, it's very different because you always open up, you know, allow yourself to be vulnerable. And most people don't like to be in the space of being vulnerable. So why? Why do you do what you do? Why you allow yourself to be open up, to be vulnerable, so that, yeah, I'm really interested and curious to know.
Younger me could have been saved a whole bunch of pain by meeting older me. Seeing somebody who was out and about, who was, you know, not even proud, who was just comfortable in their own skin, who had a place and a right to be, because I never felt like I had a right to be there, would have saved me a whole bunch of stuff. Now I wouldn't have done some of the really cool stuff that I did as well. You know, I mean, bought a dugout canoe and paddled down a river in Zaire for 5 days and didn't see you know, there was us and local people. You know, there's some amazing adventures, but you know, the self-destructive behaviours, the 8 wasted years could have saved. And so I think if what I say has an impact, resonates with any kid, and they don't have to be LGBTQI, just somebody who's different, somebody who doesn't fit in the very tight mold that society says this is how it should be and this is where you should go, then job done. I hate inequality. I hate self-entitlement or entitlement. It just drives me nuts. You know, I see people who think that they're better than other people. It just does my head in. I'm lucky. Betty, I'm absolutely lucky. I was born where I was. I had the foundations that I got given. Yeah, yes, some of the things in my childhood were not that great. But, you know, there are so many people with so many worse situations. I'm lucky. And you will never hear me say that our business is because of my genius. A lot of business success, and a lot of business success for so many different business people, is about being in the right place at the right time, and then having the chaputs to go after the opportunity that falls in your lap. But if I ever hear a business person talk about how genius they are and how self-made they are, I think they're kidding themselves. I can point to you every time that luck played a key part in the success of our company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, that's very important.
Most people, easy to talk about success and easy to talk about when you are, hitting that high note in your career, but not many people are willing to own up to their story, or, I remember when you share about your story, it remind me a part of me as well. When people ask me, what was the highlight period in my life, when you become successful, what that defined moment that helped you to become the person you are today, I said to them, probably the period when I was a cleaner, in McDonald's. That's when I learned the most. It's not really about in there, but it's really about appreciation, have that gratefulness for every single chapter in your life that shaped you the way that you are. And every chapter of your life, you can learn something from it. And today you mentioned about a topic, being authentic. And I think being authentic is really about owning up your story, is making a declaration of who you are, is not being ashamed of your past. When we're all born in a family, we can't choose our family. You can't choose your parents, right? Simon, you can choose your parent, but what you did, you choose how you want to design your life. You choose the future. You choose a future that is bright, and you choose to have courage over fear. So to the audience that's sitting here today, what would be your advice to us to conquer fear? Because we're living in a time that everybody's feeling the fear. So how do you face the fear, and how do you overcome it?
Whilst I'm thinking of the answer to that, I just want to jump back a little bit to a question you asked of why am I so open to sharing my story? Because it's who I am. And Betty, I spent, and to your audience, I spent 24 years of my life pretending I was something not. And I know pretending is exhausting. And I do listen to some people talk about themselves, and I think, man, holding all of that pretense up must just be exhausting, because we are so many things. We are our successes, but we are our failures. We are our fears, and we are our enjoyment, our enjoyments, all of those things. So if I just present this BS one-dimensional picture of me, then I'm not being truly a 3D person who's got the light and shade. So how do I face my fears? Look, I have fears. I have fears of loss. I have fears of weirdly at the moment I've got a fear of dying, and I don't know where I think I kind of know where that is, and what's a catalyst for it. The way I face my fear is to, again, feel it. It's to have and to build strategies around the things that we need to understand. We intellectualize a lot of things. Fear is not an intellectual thing. Fear is an emotional thing. So what does that fear feel like when you're in a situation that is fearful for you? What does your body do? Do you stop breathing? Do you clench in? Do you just find yourself to be immobile? Understand that physical reaction. And once you understand that physical reaction, you can start to see if you can shift that, because by shifting that shifts your response. Last year, actually, was the first time that I have sought out the advice of a mental health professional. And I did it because I was just experiencing some things that had compounded of a personal nature, and it was brilliant, really good, because what I found was I was lacking a framework of skills to be able to deal with something that, in engaging with this health professional for 10 weeks, I got the skills. And so I would say to your listeners, mental health is not a failing. mental health is about not having yet developed the framework to deal with that particular situation. You know, we train our brains, they're muscles. So, well, they're not muscles, but we train our brain to do particular things, to learn particular skills. You have to do something 1,000 times to make it a habit. So if you think about a fear, I guarantee you we've done the thing that we've felt that fear 1,000 times to make it a habit. So where's your framework to understand that and then start to shift it another way? I think that's the problem when we talk about mental health and fear, Betty, is that we look at it as somehow a deficiency. That's right. And it's not.
Yeah. I think I've been through that process, and I can really connect it to what you sharing, Simon. One of the things that I did when going through that, which is really acknowledging. I think the first step is acknowledging your emotion. Because a lot of people is reactive to the emotion, in denial. Oh, I'm not depressed. Oh, I'm not. What is going on with me? Is something wrong with me? I think the first step, and it's really difficult for me actually to seek for help when I find out that I was really depressed. After 15 years of spending my company overseas, I've been working myself to the ground, and one day the doctor literally said to me that you got to stop, otherwise you die. And yeah, I was on the verge of life or death situation, and sometimes that's what it takes to make you wake up. And I don't want any young people to go through that. So I think talking about, sharing with somebody, go and seek help. Talk to somebody about your problem. And it's okay not to be okay. It's completely fine.
Correct.
It's completely fine. And to own up that story, owning up that feeling, is that it's okay, I'm feeling right now, and go and seek help. So I am totally with you on that, Simon. And I really appreciate your times, and I really appreciate your contribution and your openness, your vulnerability to open up and share with our audience. So before we are as we are wrapping up this conversation now, what are the key messages you want to leave with our audience? And maybe we can also get our audience engaged and share their view. Maybe if you have any question that you would like to ask Simon, more than welcome to comment below. And I'm sure both Simon and I will get back to you and answer your question. So before we leave and wrapping up this conversation about the power of being authentic and owning your story, what was the message you want to leave with our audience today, Simon?
Everyone's story is their own. So for somebody who's contemplating coming out, do it for you. Don't do it for anyone else. Don't let somebody pressure you into coming out, because if you don't, you're less. If you choose that you don't feel comfortable to come out, that's okay. Absolutely okay. So I think do the thing for you that you feel comfortable with. And if you do think about coming out, think about the strategy of coming out. Think about the things that I talked about. Physical safety. You might be kicked out of home. Where are you going to sleep? Have friends that are going to be your support network. It's important just to understand who you are in the scheme of things, who you are for yourself. You're the only person you have to answer for. And I just make sure that when I do things, I'm not hurting anybody else. They're things that make me the best person I can possibly be to contribute in the best way that I possibly can. And by doing all of those things, I get to the point of just being able to breathe. And that ultimately for me was the realization of arriving at a point that I wanted to be.
I have one more question, Simon, but I think this important. This question is important. So before we leave, what do you want people to remember about Simon? If there are 3 words that you want everybody to always remember about Simon, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? And what are the 3 words that you want people to remember you of?
Empathetic, caring, and equal.
I love it. I love that your message about being equal. And I know that you spend your life right now in everything that you do, championing equality, championing, human rights, championing, a world, a better world for all of us, where we all deserve an equal opportunity to shine. And so thank you, Simon, today for your contribution. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for your text on, the power of being authentic, and explain to us what authentic really means. It means that we're owning up to our own story, owning that feeling, acknowledging, what happening around us, so that we can make change, so that we can become better. So we appreciate your time, Simon, and I look forward to welcome you back in another topic in the future, because I have a feeling that we can have this conversation going on and on and on, we'll never stop. But today, that's the topic. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Betty.
Today.
Thank you to everybody listening today.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight with Inspire Talk with Betty Tran. I hope that you can take away a lot of valuable lessons, as well as tips from Simon. And if you have any question for myself or Simon, please feel free to comment below and let us know. And I wish you all a very, very happy and peaceful night tonight. Thank you.